I'd like to welcome Danielle Ayers to the chancel this morning as we continue during the whole season of Epiphany when we are thinking about the mission of the church and our being a light to the nations, as you just heard from Isaiah and we'll hear again from the Gospel of Matthew each Sunday. We're focusing on one of the missions of the church, one of the activities that we support and engage in all the time here at Wilshire. And one of those is a partnership that we have called a Covenant of Action with Wilshire Baptist Church in South Dallas, a magnificent church in South Dallas. The pastor is Dr. Frederick Haynes, and he is a great friend of ours as well. This is Minister Danielle Ayers, and she is the Minister of Justice at that church. And Danielle, first of all, welcome to Wilshire, but tell us what a Minister of Justice title means.
Sure. Good morning, Wilshire. Let's see, I'll try to do it in a way that simplifies it. I always have a hard time explaining this to folks. So two main things I'm responsible for. The first thing is I'm responsible for educating, empowering, and equipping our congregation and community to live out their faith in the public square. So we do that in a number of ways, whether it's through the arts, whether it's through reading a book, whether it's through having an advocacy session, passing out fact sheets. It's just how do they marry their faith with their feet to go out and to make a change in the world. And so that parallels what Dr. Haynes does on Sunday mornings when he's preaching, that we might be discipled in a way that we go out into the public square and do what certainly Jesus commands us in Matthew 10 and 16, and as Dr. King would say, to have a tough mind and a tender heart. The second thing I'm responsible for is to do a lot of collaborative work, because as you can imagine, dealing with a lot of social issues, you can't do it alone. So I'm responsible to go out and really get partnerships and collaborate across racial, ethnic, religion, and denominational lines to get the work done.
And one of those partnerships is with us.
That's correct.
And the New Baptist Covenant that is part of this whole relationship that we have. Although this relationship really predates that, it was a response to things that were already happening between us and among us. And so one of the things I think would be helpful as we pause at this moment and think back across the last few years, there have been, really some tumultuous times in our nation in race relations that have bubbled up again in ways that remind us that we're not there yet by a long shot. And so I wonder if you can reflect upon that and how this partnership can begin to address that in our own context, in our own way.
Sure. I think the first thing I would say in terms of racial healing and reconciliation. Right. So I think the Christian church certainly should take the lead in this, because I believe that we should also be, as Dr. King would say again, I quote him again, that we should be the headlights and not the taillights. So I think it's very important that the church takes the lead, and certainly we follow one who models that in Jesus the Christ, right? Mm-hmm. We can't read the parables without seeing that Jesus crossed all type of lines to make sure that what he said, I come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. So he was talking about all people, so I think it's incumbent upon the church to do that. But I also think we have to do two things right here on earth, right, and not wait until we get to heaven to experience that abundant life. I think that, one, we have to engage in what I call radical truth-telling, and that is we have to be able to be honest about the fact that the country at its founding was fractured. And that is from the Constitution that relegated people to 3/5 of a person, to Plessy versus Ferguson, to the Dred Scott decision. But certainly we've had legislation to remedy those things, right? So we had the 14th Amendment that then gave complete citizenship in writing to enslaved Africans and their descendants. You have Board of Education, 1954, which reversed Plessy versus Ferguson, 63, 64, Civil Rights Act, and the Voting Rights Act. But still in 2017, you're asking me that question means public policy is not enough. But right. We have to do public policy. But in addition to that, I think there's another thing we have to do, and as a church, we're certainly poised and positioned to do that. There has to be a transformation of the heart, and that's your attitudes, your actions, and your beliefs. And oftentimes to do that, and I'll quote someone else again, is that we have to do what Howard Thurman says, is to take that inward journey. So it's also a personal thing we have to do to kind of be able to challenge our own embedded theologies, prejudices that we may have, in order to come together, in order to seek healing, because you can't go to healing if we're not dealing with the brokenness that we have and how that is rooted. So
it's fascinating you put those two things together. I think probably in American Christianity, most white Christians tend to want to agree about the heart. We need a change of heart and a change of attitude. But we perceive that most in the black church think more predominantly about the social structures that need to be changed. And what you're saying is both of those things are so, and that we both need to get to that point. Tell us the analogy that your pastor uses.
So, yes, so oftentimes, when one thing my pastor always tells me, it's okay to be a copycat as long as you copy the right cat. So I do a lot of that. Why reinvent the wheel? So one of the analogies that Dr. Haynes often will use, he was in a car accident some years ago, and he talked about his vertebrae was off, so he was walking a little awkwardly. So he would take some type of medication to kind of get a little bit of numb of the pain, so he thinks he feels better. But what he says, it wasn't until he went to the chiropractor and got an adjustment to fix the structure of his vertebrae is when he really began to walk upright and be healed. So that's part of what we're saying, that the structures are broken. And I didn't say this, but I also think we come to those tables and have the conversations in ways that don't dehumanize or try to blame or shame anyone. It's just saying, this is where we definitely got it wrong, and now we need to get it right. How do we do that together? And as I said before, we often say the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. If that is the case, then we should come together and talk about, you can have an abundant life, I can have an abundant life, because we don't operate from a place of scarcity as Christians. We believe that the earth really is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Beautiful.
Well, the congregation isn't all fully aware of our partnership being part of the larger New Baptist Covenant movement that puts churches, mostly white and black Baptist churches, together in working on issues like ours is payday lending reform, but also it's racial reconciliation. And so how would you like our congregation to pray for us and this movement?
I think one thing is to certainly pray for the pastors who agreed to enter these covenants of actions, because as Pastor Mason just mentioned, it is about racial reconciliation. Oftentimes, everybody is not prepared to enter and have those conversations because they can be very difficult, challenging, and scary, right? So I think you have to really pray for the pastors who have the strength and decide to do what's not been done before and to take that step and to enter the covenants of action. So definitely pray for the leaders of those covenants of action and the congregations as well, because sometimes there's a little tension that can take place when
tension in churches over challenging social issues?
Well, we have tensions over parking spaces and pew seats,
Okay, all right.
So, but I think it's important to just pray for the pastors who agree, who go into prayer and really do what God really is calling us to do, right? And that is to be all part of this human race, and that human race means we live in particulars.
Wonderful.
Right. So I think it's important to pray for the pastors and the congregations that enter into the covenant together.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for all you do and for our partnership. We're grateful that you've come. I see you have some other Friendship West friends here.
Oh, yes. So we have Sheila Jones, who is actually a part of our New Baptist Covenant committee team that's met with several of the folks from Wilshire. Carlos Fletcher and Pam Ambrose, who are very dedicated members of the church and of our justice ministry. So they came out to join us at 11 o'clock.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Danielle.